Okay, so I'm using a thermometer. You want to make sure, see that's too hot already, that'll kill my yeast. 110 is about the top of where you want it to be. I'm kind of measuring into the middle of the water. And right now my warm water is 112, so I'm gonna let it cool down a little bit. Ideal is about 100 degrees. Yeah, it's definitely climbing still. So that will kill the yeast. You wanna make sure it's just warm, about 100 degrees at the top, kind of maybe like 90, somewhere between like 95, 100. That's where I try to be. While the water is warm though, I'm gonna dissolve my 2 teaspoons of pink Himalayan sea salt because it helps it dissolve better. My butter is melted. That's my pink Himalayan sea salt. I'm gonna be adding in, this is a local honey. I use a Dark Wildflower Honey. And the honey is important because that's the sugar that the yeast is gonna feed off of. And because I bake, and this is making 2 loaves, I should preface that. Because I am making so much, I usually buy my yeast in a jar and then store it in the fridge once you open it. So this is what it looks like with my honey, my melted butter, my water, my salt. And then I'm not gonna add my yeast yet. I'm gonna add in some flour. And then I'm gonna add the yeast. I'll send you the recipe that I use. Like I said, it makes 2 loaves. I freeze one until I'm ready to use it. My 4 cups of flour are in here, and I'm gonna use a dough hook attachment and start to mix it up. Still don't have my yeast in there yet. Okay, so this is what 4 cups of flour kind of mixed in. I'm gonna be adding in my 2 teaspoons. It's hard to look at the camera at the same time. Kind of just distribute them. They're gonna be distributed when I do this, but the yeast is going in here. Now there's different ways of doing it. Sometimes they have you add the yeast to the water with the sugar ahead of time and then wait for it to bubble. I have found that this is much easier and seems to work out better. So back into mixing it in, and then I'm gonna add more flour here shortly. When it talks about that the dough should be shaggy and pulling away from the sides, see it's starting to slow down a little bit. It's not like really pretty and smooth, that's shaggy. And now I'm gonna let the KitchenAid do all the kneading work. See how it's pulling away from the sides? It's not like really sticking to the sides anymore. That's what you want. I'm just gonna let this go for about 7 or 8 minutes, and that's kneading my dough for me. I just wanna show you kind of what it looks like now in the middle of kneading it. Notice this is what shaggy dough looks like. It's not smooth. It's just kind of forming its own little blob, and that's good. That's what we want. So I'm just gonna let it keep on beating and kneading it for me, and then I'll show you the next step. There's about a minute left, but I want to show you, this is the mixing bowl I'm going to move it into, and then before I put the dough in, I kind of do a little olive oil around the sides just to kind of help it loosen up a little bit so it doesn't stick when it's rising, because that's what you don't want. So I just kind of really get in there, you know, make sure it's coated. And then, like you can really see, it's just not sticking to the bottom. If it was sticking to the bottom a little bit, I'd add a little bit more flour, which I did, just like a little bit of a sprinkling, and now it's good. I'm trying to show you kind of what it looks like. So you see, it's not completely sticking to you, but it's sticky enough. Like, so sometimes wetting your fingers helps. I mean, obviously I wash my hands incessantly while I'm doing this. So this is my dough ball. You can see I kind of rolled it around a little bit just to form a nice little ball. I am going to cover it with a towel. This recipe calls to like preheat your oven and put in there. I don't do that. I just cover it with a tea towel and I stick it in the microwave and just periodically check on it. You got to figure at least it's going to be in there for 1 hour at minimum to do a full rise. And the reason that all of that kneading and everything else was so important is because you need the gluten to form, which also helps with the rise. So I'm just gonna leave that in here and come back and check on it in an hour. Okay, so it's been over an hour and you can see it's more than doubled in size. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pour this out onto my cutting board here. I'm gonna put down a covering and divide it into 2 loaves. All right, so I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna cut it in half. I'm not measuring, I'm just doing it by eyesight. And I'm gonna work with one piece at a time. So I'm gonna put this back in my bowl. Okay, and I don't need to knead it anymore, so I'm just gonna kind of stretch it out, make a rectangle shape, and then I'm just gonna roll it. It's a lot longer than I want it to be, but that's okay. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just gonna stick it into my loaf pan here. Okay, kind of make sure it's all in there, taking the shape. I'm gonna do the same thing to the other one, and then we're gonna let them rise. Back in the oven. So both are in here. Again, I'm gonna stick them back in the microwave. This time I'm not gonna cover them, and I'll show you why. There we go. Because I'm going to be able to kind of observe them, and what you're looking for is for them to come above here. You want them to rise up above here, and then it's time to go in the oven. So that doesn't necessarily take an hour. So I'm gonna start getting my oven preheated and get it ready. It depends upon how warm, how humid your kitchen is, how long it'll take it to rise above there. Okay, so this is, you can kind of see here, they're ready to go into the oven at this point. My oven is preheated. I'm gonna put them both here on a cookie sheet and then put them in the oven. Notice I'm not putting any line, I'm not making any cuts. I'm just literally putting them in as is. And there they go. 30 minutes and then I'll pull them out. And they're done. The last thing I do is I take a little bit of butter and just go across the top. Gives it a nice little flavor. There we go. All done. Final step is putting them onto a cooling rack, and I take them out of the silicone just so they don't continue cooking.